Some no's are not rejection. They are fear disguised as courage. Arohi worked at a small seaside cafe where the ocean whispered secrets through open windows. She liked routine, liked knowing what came next. Love had never been part of that plan, especially not the kind that asked her to be brave. Then Meher walked in. She came every afternoon, always choosing the table by the window. Her smile was quiet but warm, her eyes curious, as if she saw through Arohi's practiced calm. At first, they spoke about simple things, the weather, coffee, the sea. But soon, their conversation stretched longer, filled with pauses that said more than words. Arohi felt it. The pull. The dangerous hope. She tried to ignore how her heart raced whenever Meher laughed, or how her world softened when their eyes met. Wanting a woman felt like standing on the edge of something forbidden and beautiful all at once. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Meher hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something?" Arohi nodded, already knowing. "Would you like to go out with me?" Time slowed. Arohi's heart screamed yes so loudly it hurt. But fear, old, heavy, familiar, rose faster. Fear of judgment. Fear of loss. Fear of being seen. Her lips parted, and the wrong word escaped. "No." The smile on Meher's face faltered for just a second before she masked it. "That's okay," she said softly. "I understand." She didn't ask why. She didn't push. That night, lying awake in the dark, Arohi pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the ache she had invited herself. She hadn't rejected Meher. She had rejected her own truth. And somewhere deep inside, her heart whispered the answer she had been too afraid to say out loud. Yes. The chair by the window stayed empty. Day after day, Arohi poured coffee while pretending not to look at it. She told herself Meher had simply moved on. That this was the natural consequence of saying no. Still, every time the cafe door opened, her heart lifted, then fell. Weeks passed like this, heavy and slow. Then fate intervened. They met again at a friend's small gathering, music humming softly in the background. Arohi noticed Meher immediately. She looked the same, yet different, her smile polite, her warmth carefully folded away. When their eyes met, something unspoken trembled between them. "Hi," Meher said, her voice steady. "Hi," Arohi replied, suddenly unsure of her hands, her breath, her words. They talked about safe things, work, mutual friends, meaningless laughter. But beneath it all, the truth pressed hard against Arohi's chest. This distance wasn't healing. It was punishment. Later that evening, under dim fairy lights on the balcony, Meher finally broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. Arohi nodded. "Why did you say no?" The question landed softly but cut deep. Arohi stared at the city lights, blinking back emotion. "Because wanting you felt like stepping into something I couldn't control." Meher smiled sadly. "And do you always walk away from things that scare you?" Arohi didn't answer. Their fingers brushed accidentally. Electricity surged, familiar, undeniable. For a moment, Arohi almost reached for Meher's hand. Almost. But fear whispered again. She stepped back. "I'm sorry," Arohi said, her voice barely audible. Meher's eyes softened, but something closed behind them. "So am I." When Arohi left that night, she understood something painful and clear. Saying no once had been easy. Living with it was not. And distance, she realized too late, hurt far more than rejection ever could. Arohi tried to move on. She told herself that time would soften the ache, that distance would make Meher a memory instead of a wound. She went on dates. She smiled when expected. But every laugh felt borrowed, every touch felt wrong. No one felt like Meher. The truth followed her everywhere, in songs, in sea salt air, in quiet moments before sleep. Her heart refused to stay silent. One night, rain poured from the sky like a confession. Without planning, without thinking, Arohi found herself standing outside Meher's apartment, soaked and trembling. Fear still lived inside her, but regret lived louder. The door opened. Meher froze when she saw her. Arohi? I said no, Arohi whispered, water dripping from her hair, but my heart never did. Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. Meher searched her face. And now? Arohi took a step forward, her voice breaking. Now I'm scared, but I'm more afraid of a life where I never told you the truth. For a moment, Meher didn't move. Then she pulled Arohi into her arms. The world outside disappeared. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, they talked, on the floor, wrapped in blankets, sharing everything they had been hiding. Fears of judgment. The loneliness of loving quietly. The exhaustion of pretending. As dawn crept in through the window, Arohi felt lighter than she had in months. For the first time, she hadn't run. For the first time, she let her heart speak without interruption. And though nothing was promised, one truth settled gently between them. Love had waited. And this time Arohi was finally listening. Their love did not arrive all at once. It unfolded quietly, like morning light slipping through curtains. Arohi and Meher took their time, moving carefully, respecting the fragile trust between them. They started with late-night calls that stretched into laughter, with shared coffees and long walks where hands almost touched. Almost. Public spaces still made Arohi tense. Her shoulders stiffened whenever someone looked too long. Meher noticed everything but never pushed. One evening, sitting by the sea, Meher finally spoke. You don't have to rush, she said gently. But don't disappear either. Arohi swallowed. I'm scared I'll fail you. Meher turned to her. I'm scared too. That doesn't make us weak. The word settled deep inside Arohi. Fear still visited her, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet. Once, overwhelmed by doubt, she pulled away again. She stopped replying for days, drowning in guilt and confusion. When she finally met Meher, her voice trembled. What if I'm not brave enough to love you properly? Meher stepped closer, her eyes steady. I'm not asking you to be fearless, she said. I'm asking you to be honest. That night, Arohi made a decision. Love wasn't a single moment of courage, it was a series of small choices. Holding on instead of running. Speaking instead of hiding. Staying, even when fear knocked. She reached for Meher's hand in public for the first time. It was a small gesture, but it felt like everything. Meher smiled, her eyes shining. Is this your yes? Arohi nodded, heart racing. This is me choosing you. And for the first time, her yes felt real, not because fear was gone, but because love was finally stronger. Love does not exist in silence forever. The world noticed. It started with lingering stares, with conversations that stopped when Arohi and Meher entered a room. Then came questions disguised as concern, advice wrapped in disapproval. Arohi felt the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. She tried to stay strong, but some nights, strength ran out. One evening, after a particularly hard day, Arohi broke. Tears spilled before she could stop them. Maybe we're making life harder than it needs to be, she whispered. Maybe I should have stayed away. Meher didn't raise her voice. She simply held Arohi's face in her hands. Don't make yourself smaller to fit into someone else's comfort, she said. Loving me isn't your mistake. Arohi wanted to believe her, but fear had roots. Family silence hurt the most. Messages left unanswered. Love that suddenly came with conditions. Arohi carried the guilt like a second skin, apologizing even when no apology was needed. One night, standing alone in front of the mirror, Arohi finally saw herself clearly, not as someone confused or broken, but as someone who loved deeply and honestly. She chose not to hide anymore. The next time judgment came, she didn't flinch. She stood beside Meher, her hand steady in hers. No explanations. No apologies. Later, Meher smiled softly. That was brave. Arohi shook her head. No. That was necessary. The world hadn't softened, but something inside Arohi had grown unshakable. For the first time, she understood. Saying no had never protected her. Saying yes, to love, to truth, to herself, had. Years passed, quietly and beautifully. Love settled into their lives, not as something dramatic, but as something steady. Arohi learned that courage didn't always roar. Sometimes, it was simply staying. One afternoon, they returned to the seaside cafe where everything had begun. The same ocean whispered beyond the windows. The same sunlight danced across wooden tables. Meher smiled, eyes soft. Do you remember the first time I asked you out? Arohi laughed, a little breathless. I remember saying no. And your heart? Meher teased gently. Arohi took Meher's hand, this time without hesitation. My heart never said anything else. They sat in comfortable silence, fingers intertwined, no longer afraid of being seen. The world hadn't changed completely, but they had learned how to live honestly within it. Later, as the sun dipped low, Meher reached into her bag and pulled out a small ring, not flashy, not perfect, just real. I don't need a perfect answer, Meher said softly. I just need you. Arohi felt tears rise, but this time they weren't born of fear. Yes, she said. Every day. In every way. The word felt different now. Lighter. True. As the waves crashed outside, Arohi realized something she wished she had known sooner. Sometimes, the bravest love story doesn't begin with a yes. It begins with a no. And the courage to finally unlearn it.